the first of my three instruments. As you can see, we have three, right? 1, 2, 3. Basically I don't know if you call it something, I would call it a hook, right? To convince the folks to come out and actually listen to all these things I have to say, I needed a hook. Not to say that you're a fish, but maybe in a biblical sense, maybe. So basically, the charge is, Ukrainians, do you know your national instruments? You think that you know the bandura, but do you really know the traditional bandura? Do you know not just the bandura, you know what the kobza is? You've heard the term, maybe some collection of poetry of a national poet, but the instrument, the kobza, have you actually ever heard it? Or the Ukrainian torban, an incredible instrument of the Cossack Baroque period. You know what a turban is, right? It's not a Muslim hat, although you might think it is. So I'm hoping that people will be interested enough in their culture to actually come and have a chance to see not just any bandura, but one of the best banduras in the world. I'm not bragging, right? I know the makers. I know some will say, "Oh, it's not a very traditional bandura. It's too nice. It sounds too nice. It's too resonant. It's too sweet sounding." But it's a subjective question. But I like the instrument. So, what is this instrument? Does anybody know? Let's say all together.
Bandura.
Yes, this is the bandura. It's a traditional bandura. Most people in the Ukrainian community know the bandura. They know the modern bandura. We have a problem. Because a lot of people thought, and even I thought when I got my first bandura, I thought this big modern bandura with 60-some strings, I thought it was a folk instrument. I thought it was a traditional Ukrainian instrument. I was very, very wrong. Why didn't I know? Why don't most Ukrainians know? Because we weren't supposed to know, right? The Stalin project, to keep Ukraine as a slave nation. He realized he has to get rid of all this, right? All the many traditional forms. But if you get rid of all the banduras, Ukrainians will say, wait a second, something's fishy. They have destroyed our bandura. So there's some smart folks, right? Some diabolical folks up to the north. And they say, okay, we'll give the Ukrainians a bandura, but it will be a bandura which their children will cry and say, we do not want to play the bandura. It's so big, it's so heavy. It's partly a joke, but it might be true. So I started playing this big instrument and looking at, listening to some recordings on wax from Mr. Andriy Hornyakevich, who I met when I was about 18 years old, maybe 19. He turned me on to the idea that really the traditional instrument is much different. And he said, go to Ukraine and find the Kobzar Guild. My teacher, Julian Katowski, he actually got an excellent bandura made from an excellent maker in Kiev, Budnik. And it was so wonderful sounding that I decided this was for me. And at that time I realized that as I was a bandurist, serious, but I was making avant-garde compositions. I was playing in the Capella Banduristica in Detroit. I was very serious, but I realized I know no traditional bandura music. I know nothing about tradition whatsoever. And I realized that's not right. But then when I saw that really most of my colleagues, they also know the tradition. And I realized that was some of the most important work for banduras today, folklore, getting to the tradition. So what did we find? We found that the traditional bandura is a lot lighter. It's about 5 times lighter, right? It's not strung with high tension metal strings. We have gut. These are nylon. It's a cheap modern day replacement. And it sounds like this. Very interesting scale. And it's one of many scales, right? Each kobzar actually had his own. So very different instruments. We don't have the chromatic strings, nor do we need the chromatic strings. We have chromatism by basically changing with these wooden pegs. Even different registers have different tones. On the traditional bandura, we actually have a frettable neck. Now there's an idea that, wait a second, the bandura was not a frettable instrument, it was the kobza that was fretted. But we found some interesting, in Kales's notes, the instrument here has 3 tones. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So only 3 tones, that means 3 basses, right? So that means the composer only played 3 basses, right? That'd be logical, right? Well, if you press, you get more tones. Even quarter tones. So theoretically, you could fret them, but then in some of Lysenko's notes, or Kolessa's notes, we see a question mark, because there's more tones coming out of the bandura of Nahanat Pancharento. And other, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of repertoire for the bandura, so it's really hard to say how over 700 years folks played the instruments. But theoretically, the instrument couldn't even be fretted. So that's very nice, very different instrument. But what would the kobzari have sounded like? And we'll start with probably the central song of the kobzari repertoire. Again, I said that these were blind singers, blind spiritual singers. And the repertoire was basically church hymns, right, kanti. Also, these kind of story songs, we might call them parables, or as Ukrainians call them dumi, right? They have a moral ending. So one of the centralmost hymns which most all the kobzari played was the kant about the truth. And the first time I heard this kant, it was on a recording. I didn't know Ukrainian at all, but after hearing it, I had the feeling that he's singing so truthfully that there's something very right, there's a certain justice. But when I read the liner notes, it was the kant about the truth. I realized that even not knowing language, these emotions come through. And if you can imagine why the kobzari would have all been killed in 1933, because they sang such works in an empire which was constantly dealing in deceit and lying. And if you don't believe me, look at what the empire is doing today and how many lies, and through the internet they have to convince the world that they're right and Ukraine is wrong. Or even in a North American culture where some people say, interesting, the first line of the kant, we say that today we have a world where that which people call the truth, it's really a lie. What a message. Or we have a modern world, even in North America. Somebody once said, well, there are the facts, but there's also the alternate facts. Yeah. So Kant is called Nemai's Pravda. There's no truth in the world, but it's not a depressing song. It's not a pessimistic song. The idea is there is truth, but if the truth comes down to earth from people who speak the truth, because when you speak the truth, then the heavenly kingdom or God, which is love through you, comes out in the form of truth.
Правда, но